This is in no way my attempt to justify my comic book obsession. And this story, I really, really like. Artwork, the storytelling. Hello and welcome to another episode of The Pull List. My name is Travis. Let's talk about the film Logan. Logan is Hugh Jackman's 9th and final time portraying the Wolverine, and what a send-off it is. And it's been getting stellar reviews. Seriously, it seems like everybody and their mother is posting a review video about this movie. But instead of making a video about how much I liked it, I'm going to delve into one of the little aspects of the movie that isn't really explained. There'll be spoilers, blah, blah, blah. Go see the movie and then come back and watch this video. First off, let's touch on some of the similarities and differences between the sort of source material Old Man Logan and the film Logan. I say sort of because there are very few similarities between the comic book and the film. Both are stories about an aging Wolverine on a road trip with another hero to deliver something, but that's about it. In Logan, instead of a blind Hawkeye, you have a Professor X with Alzheimer's. Instead of super soldier serum, you have a female clone of Wolverine. In the comic, the United States is divided between supervillains, and there are a lot more characters in the comics. Kingpin, Doctor Doom, Red Skull, the Hulk family. A very important difference between the comic book and the movie is that in the comic book, it's Wolverine's fault that all of the X-Men are dead. In the movie, it's strongly alluded to the fact that they are dead because of one of Professor X's seizures. So I'm telling you all of this to set up what I think is a really meta theory about where the kids were headed. Eden. It's revealed pretty early on in the film that the plan is to convince Logan to take Gabriella and Laura to North Dakota so they can cross the Canadian border to safety. Begrudgingly, Logan ends up starting a road trip with Laura and Professor X, only to find out that Laura is an X-Men fan. While glancing through the comic, Logan says, maybe a quarter of it happened, and not like this. And then later on in the film, Logan finds those same exact coordinates that Gabriella had written down for Eden in a comic book. So he writes off Eden as not being real. And then in the third act, Logan finds out that the other kids were using these same coordinates as a meetup place. So even if Eden wasn't real, the coordinates still worked. But then it's shown that the kids were actually communicating with someone on the other side of the border. There were people waiting for them. But let's go back to what Logan said about the comics. Maybe a quarter of it happened and not like this. You could take that as saying that the storylines and the costumes were embellished for storytelling purposes. I mean, it did show Logan in his yellow and blue suit, which was a nice touch, but there's something more about what he said, and I realized while watching the film that it could be an allegory for Logan and Old Man Logan. It is not a direct adaptation. There are major changes to the story. Maybe a quarter of it happened, and not like this. But let's get back to the actual plot of Logan. Even if he was sort of right, that means 3/4 of this stuff isn't real, but a quarter of it is, which is still a pretty substantial amount. The X-Men sort of worked in the shadows. I mean, it was kind of their jam. They would show up, beat the baddies, catch some flack for being different, save the day, get blamed anyway, and then disappear into the night. And with 25% accuracy, who would know that much about the X-Men unless the writer was a member of the X-Men? Now that idea brings up a lot of questions. Who could it have been? Where were they the entire movie? Why did they flee the country to Canada? But before we get into that, let's talk briefly about Professor X's Westchester incident. We know that from the film, Professor X in his old age is prone to seizures and needs to take medication. When he forgets to take medication, his powerful psychic abilities paralyze everyone in the vicinity, slowly killing them. The Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters is located in Westchester, so whatever this Westchester incident was, happened at the X-Men's home. According to news reports, the incident in Westchester injured 600 plus people and killed 7, including some members of the X-Men. That means not all of the core X-Men were killed, maybe 3 or 4, not 7. 7 people were killed, including some X-Men. It's hard to believe that all of the X-Men were at the mansion and no one was on a mission or visiting other people or getting more students for the school or something. So it's pretty impossible to try to deduce which X-Men were killed in the Westchester incident. I've seen people commenting, oh, it was probably these 7 X-Men or these 7 X-Men, but 7 X-Men didn't die. And other people are saying, well, Jean Grey is probably still alive, which I have some issues with that too. Let's say Jean Grey was at the mansion when the seizure attack happened. She probably would have been able to fight off the attack or at least survive. However, Jean Grey, being who she is, would have spent her energy to protect the other students, possibly giving her life to do so. So if any of the X-Men survived, why aren't they around? Well, even after Professor X's seizure attack, remaining X-Men may have been killed off by Caliban and the Reavers hunting down remaining mutants. And Xavier said himself that Logan kept them running. Logan knew that anyone in the Professor's vicinity was in danger, and they probably kept Caliban around to help sniff out any mutants getting too close to the Professor. Remember, their plan was to eventually get a boat. It would be near impossible to track someone on a boat, and the Professor wouldn't really be a danger to anyone out there. So why am I telling you all this? Because of what Logan says about the comic book. Maybe a quarter of it happened and not like this. He sees the coordinates in the comic book and he dismisses them as fiction. But if one of the X-Men did write these stories, having inside information about their adventures, they would be able to secretly plant information in the comic books without anyone noticing. That's why the kids treated these comics like their map to safety. Someone across the border was communicating with them. And when they got to the coordinates, someone across the border continued communicating with them. I wholeheartedly believe that some of the X-Men survived Xavier's seizure attack or came back from a mission and found what happened, gathered as many students as they could, and eventually crossed the border to Canada for safety. That way the Reavers couldn't get to them, the water supply and the corn syrup weren't tainted with a mutant suppressant. They created a mutant safe haven in Canada. Eden is real. So, I hear you saying, if there is a mutant safe haven, is there any evidence in the comics to help support this? Why, thank you, I'm glad you asked. Notable X-Men characters who have created a mutant safe haven, besides Charles Xavier, of course, include Cyclops, Emma Frost, Magneto, kind of, and Doom in the year 2099. Even though Doom isn't a mutant, Doom, actually, his film rights are owned by Fox, which reminds me, Fox, why haven't we seen a Fantastic Four X-Men crossover yet? No, stop, I need to stay focused. This video is already really long. It would make sense for Cyclops or possibly Emma Frost to create a sanctuary in Canada with Alpha Flight, maybe? Halfway through the film, I thought the coordinates have to be real, but the ending is going to be kind of open-ended. We're not going to know if Laura makes it to the coordinates or not, and that'll perfectly set Fox up for some sort of Runaways adaptation. The Runaways is a Marvel comic series about a group of kids that find out that their parents are super powerful and part of this evil organization, and then the kids find out that they also have superpowers. Since these kids are genetic clones of super powerful mutants, it would make sense if Fox wanted to continue it by going in that direction. I mean, it's not like they need Hugh Jackman anymore, am I right? Oh, that was too soon, me. And true fans would have noticed that the X-Men comics in the film weren't actually real X-Men comics. They were comics that were created for the film to help show specific scenes and some Easter eggs. They brought on Joe Quesada, Marvel's chief creative officer, to help pen the books, and they look amazing. So the creator of these comics is a member of the X-Men. Joe Quesada created these comics. Joe Quesada is a mutant. And that's the point of this video. Joe Quesada is a mutant. In the comments down below, let me know your thoughts on the movie as a whole and where you think the kids are going to go from here. Do you think Eden is real? Do you think they're going to start another mutant school? Or do you think they're just gonna kind of find their way through the wilderness of Canada, maybe bumping into Alpha Flight at some point? Huh. I just realized I filmed this whole video without replacing that comic right there because I sold it. So, I need to find a replacement. iZombie #1, Superhero Secret Wars, just because I really like Black Suited Spider-Man, and these action figure variants are pretty great. Afterlife with Archie variant signed by the creators. Chew with some sketches on them. These are kind of cool. But I need to find something that fits back here. I have Spider-Man, Wolverine, Rat Queen's Image, Deadpool. I have some Deadpool. Another Deadpool. Marvel Spotlight Deadpool. Lady Mechanica. The color version of that Lock and Key cover right there. American Vampire. I should just do a whole video where I just go through some of my books. Wicked and Divine, Wayward, Birthright. These are all Image books. You know what? This is fitting for the video I just did. The all-new, all-different X-Men. X-Men number 94. Yeah, this is going up on the wall. Even though it's an awful 1.8. Signed by Stan Lee, though. So, it's rough. But, maybe I'll talk about this issue in a future video for those of you that don't know what happens in this issue. perfect. That's it for this episode of The Pull List. My name is Travis. Thank you for fueling my comic book obsession, and you will see me tomorrow.